You're very welcome back. Now, the number of people eating gluten-free diets has risen hugely over the last few years, and with that, a greater range of products has become available.
But what does being gluten-free actually mean, and could it be good for our health to cut out wheat entirely? Well, here to explain all is a friend of the show, nutritionist Heather Leeson. Heather, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
This is a subject close to my heart. I have one of my boys is celiac, so the world of gluten-free is in our house.
Indeed.
But should we all be knocking back on the gluten? Who does it affect?
Well, first of all, what is it? So gluten's just a protein. It's a natural protein. It's found in wheat, but it's also found in rye, barley, triticale, so a number of grains. So the difference between wheat and gluten is that gluten is a bigger deal to cut out. Now, the people who really do need to forever avoid gluten, like your son, are celiacs. That's an autoimmune disease. Your body can't handle gluten and it damages your gut, causes nutritional deficiencies. And it's relatively more common in Ireland than in other places in the world. So 1% of the population, still a tiny amount, have celiac disease. Yeah. But they're like, if you're worried about do you have it, symptoms would be gut issues, mouth ulcers, anemia, fatigue. But they're very non-specific, so they can be related to lots of different things. Now, there is a strong genetic link, like you were mentioning.
Right.
So, you know, if you think, I've got these symptoms, my mum's a celiac, my dad's a celiac, then you should get tested. And that's going to your GP, getting a blood test. But key to that, and something I see with a lot of my patients, is you have to be eating gluten to do that test.
Absolutely.
So if you've already cut it out, the test is not going to be any use.
That's right.
And then if the test is positive, you go and have a biopsy for a definitive diagnosis. That's celiac disease, but that's only a tiny amount of us.
The difference between celiac disease then and people who say they're gluten intolerant?
So there is a swathe of the population, much more. The Celiac Society of Ireland reckon 400,000 of us in Ireland have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So it is a real thing where people are reacting to gluten. And again, it might be gut, but it might be skin, it might be headache. Brain fog is a symptom that's reported. And it is a real thing. Now, we don't understand it really well yet, but it is not in people's heads. There are people who feel really unwell eating wheat.
So the symptoms of that would be on your day-to-day life. I mean, bowel issues, you mentioned brain fog, skin, just general feeling of being unwell.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is, well, there's kind of two reasons why that might be the case. First of all, we're eating so much wheat in our... If you think of the typical Irish diet, and you know all about it when you have to take it out.
When you have to take it out, you go, holy moly, there's gluten in everything.
I'd say you've great fun in the weekly shop.
Well, it's, you know what, we'll talk about this because it has got better. You know, Ellie was diagnosed 2-3 years ago. Just a range of products.
Oh, yeah.
My God, they're expensive, though.
No, they are, absolutely.
Holy moly.
So you want to be sure that you need to take them out. But we're eating a lot of wheat. So you think, cereal or toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner. That's a massive gluten load. And the new forms of gluten that we eat nowadays, these modern forms, they're bred for yield, they're bred to have more gluten, because gluten's what gives that lovely doughy consistency to things. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Now, eating something like, if you think I'm reacting to wheat, cut it back, keep a food diary, see if it is a trigger, and try something like sourdough bread, because the sourdough process, not if you're celiac, it's gone, but if you think you're reacting to gluten, you're not celiac, try sourdough. It's slightly easier to digest.
So it's safe to say that we could all benefit from reducing gluten in our diets,
general.
regardless.
Well, variety is the spice of life, and if you're having too much of one thing, you're ruling out other foods.
So what do we substitute then? Let's say you mentioned cereal for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, and pasta for dinner. Can you, like, we all need to eat our carbohydrates to keep our energy up. So what can you substitute out? Loads
of naturally gluten-free carbohydrates, starting with oats. Now, oats, the challenge with oats for celiac, porridge, granola, is that they're often processed in factories where wheat is processed. So if you're a celiac, you're going for gluten
tiny little dot, you were saying, can have a
tiny little dot. Yeah, you have to totally avoid it.
Yeah.
But for most of us, oats would be all right.
And I have to say that the Celiac Society in Ireland, they produce a book every year, a little handbook that really you can join the association. You get sent the book, and they print all of the certified gluten-free products. So, and they do it supermarket by supermarket. So if you're out shopping, you go, God, and because you don't know the label, because we can't read the labels whether it is or isn't. You check the book. If it's there, it's certified.
That's a fantastic resource.
It is fantastic.
But I will say that it's better from a nutritional perspective to watch the gluten-free products, because I mean, gluten-free biscuits are still biscuits, so you don't want to be eating too many of those. And there's a whole world of naturally gluten-free carbs like potatoes, sweet potatoes, quinoa, rice, corn, so your corn cakes, your tortilla wraps.
Yeah.
You need to
Corn is
look at the label.
gluten-free.
Corn is
Oh, wow.
gluten-free. So there's a whole world of food out there.
For your snack, have your rice cakes instead of a cracker with the cheese and things.
But even
like
if you're making a stew or a casserole, when you would put in a spoonful of flour to thicken the sauce,
Corn
you can't.
flour.
Yeah.
It has to be corn flour.
Yeah, but there's
Because it's
ways.
gluten-free.
There's ways to do it. Now,
Yeah.
the other thing to consider, we were talking about gut issues, is why would people be reacting to wheat? Something called SIBO. So if you've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth,
I fear I may be a candidate for this one.
Right.
I
Too
can
much.
literally go from being as flat
So
as I can be.
bloats.
I can look 9 months pregnant
that's the
in the space of a
classic.
meal.
So flat in the flat stomach in the morning, really bloated by the
SIBOs,
evening.
never heard of them.
SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Too much bacteria in your small intestine. And there, you're reacting to fermentable carbohydrates,
Right.
like wheat. If you cut out wheat, if you've got SIBO, you're still going to react to things like dairy, garlic, onions, pulses. You can get that as a breath test. Lots of information on our website. And if you're not sure, take out wheat or gluten. Like, take it out for 4-6 weeks, maybe 2
And
weeks
just
for
see.
a kid, and see.
Yeah.
Keep a food diary. If you've got a family history of celiac disease, get tested before you take it out.
Yeah.
But then, and then after 4 or 6 weeks, reintroduce it one by one. You might start with something like spelt or rye and see, do I react? Am I having a reaction? You can absolutely live without wheat and gluten, but you need to replace it with healthy options.
Yeah.
And there are healthy options out there, even in terms of bread. Bread is the one thing I'd say your son really misses.
Bread is the tough one, but there are a couple of brands and a couple of versions of sourdough or white bread
They're so
rolls that we've
expensive, though.
found. My God, they're
The price
expensive. They are.
difference is shocking.
Now, the
But they just take
McCambridge's
a bit
one.
of finding.
Exactly, the McCambridge's one, pretty readily available. That's the one,
This one here,
that
is
is
it?
pretty tasty. And there's a couple of recipes for gluten-free bread
Do you know
on
what he
our
misses
website.
most?
What?
Donuts.
The gluten-free stuff is just not the same. It's the texture thing.
And there's some
Yeah,
great
it's tricky.
companies out there doing some gluten-free baking and all that, but we've yet to find that one that'll go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've replaced our pasta with gluten-free.
Yeah.
You don't know, there's
Yeah.
no taste difference at all.
Yeah.
Like pasta sauces, if you find the right ones, it's all good.
But there's some things you
There's
just
some
can't
things.
do.
I know, yeah, I know.
What do you do, though? I mean, what's the first step? There's going to be people watching this, and what you're saying is ticking all the boxes, going, haha, I think that's me.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Take it out, keep a food diary, reintroduce.
Can you test? Can you go to a GP?
You can test for celiac disease. You can test for SIBO 100%. That's a breath test. So there is information on kind of step by step on our website. But the food diary, taking it out, elimination diet, putting it back in, challenging, is that actually a problem for me? Is the safest way. What you want to avoid is a long-term, really restrictive diet where you're cutting out loads of different foods.
So don't cut it out unless you need to.
Well, don't cut out lots of foods. You can
Yeah.
cut out wheat and gluten, but do challenge, can I tolerate this?
The
Can I
idea
put a
of the food
little bit
diary-
back in?
The idea of the food diary is great because if you're getting a reaction, make a note of it.
Yeah.
And then if you're looking back at it over 2 weeks' time, you go, well, that's what I ate that day, or those 2 days up to it.
Yeah.
And then that's the information you bring to
Exactly.
someone like yourself or a doctor. You know
a
what I mean?
doctor, exactly. And then if you're going to take it out, replace it with good stuff. Don't just go for all the refined, processed, gluten-free stuff.
Find the good stuff. It's out there.
It is
You
out
just
there,
need to
and
look a bit at
and
it.
you can find it.
Oh,
You're like
yeah.
Superman around the
Your miners
supermarket.
hadn't a look.
I know.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you
great
so
advice,
much
as
once
always.
again. And
Sure.
of course, if you do feel that you may have an intolerance, do always seek experts' advice from a medical professional. Now, up next, travel expert Michelle Walsh-Jackson is with us to share some fabulous spa and retreat ideas. See you after the break.